Everybody rolls around. I lay on my weekday boots down. I put on my glove rags and pay the time. Hey, 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 hey. Oh, yeah, yeah. 'Cause that's when I party down. Party down. Party hard. Party down.
Welcome back to the Weekend Warrior Show. Since switching to the video a few months ago, I'm starting to really enjoy talking about movies again, maybe for the first time in many years. The only thing to make this any better would be if I get more paid subscribers. $50 a year seems like a pretty good deal for all you get here from my reviews and my interviews and the box office stuff. I've yet to put much behind the paywall. I did that a little bit a few years ago, and it didn't really work out. But I could really use the dough. So if you can become a paid subscriber or become a lifetime member for just $150, that comes with some benefits you'll only find out about when you actually become one. So anyway, I need more subscribers, but let's get on to the box office. Let's talk about some of the movies. We'll start things off with the weekend wrap-up because this past weekend was a very good one. Actually, one of the best weekends we've had this year. A 4-day holiday due to President's Day Monday with a super busy Valentine's Day on Saturday. A few of the new wide releases did better than I expected and predicted, and one did not quite achieve the same success that everyone was expecting. I'm recording this on Monday afternoon, so I'm mostly going by estimates for the 3-day weekend with a few movies projecting Monday. As always, these numbers are very likely to change, but we'll go with what we have. The big movie for this weekend was supposed to be Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights, starring Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi. It had so much going for it, including the coveted Valentine's Day weekend, which is perfect for a romantic movie. It also has some direct competition, especially from Amazon MGM's Crime 101, starring Chris Hemsworth, Halle Berry, and Mark Ruffalo. What Wuthering Heights didn't have was the strongest reviews. And on Friday, the Rotten Tomatoes score was at 65%, and it's actually dropped even lower since then, which is just passable as fresh. But nowhere near the raves I was expecting when I recorded last week's The Weekend Warrior Show. It ended up making just $32.8 million over the 3-day weekend, and an estimated $38 million on Monday, which is well below the $40 to $50 million many expected and predicted. It did kind of well overseas. I don't have the numbers yet for that, but domestically, it's probably not going to make it to $100 million. It'll probably end up maybe below $80 million even. So not good for Wuthering Heights. It's a shame. I love the movie. I can't wait to see it again. We've had a few anime releases this year, mostly low-profile stuff from Viva, but none as prominent as Sony Pictures Animation's GOAT, exec produced and featuring the voice of ball player Steph Curry. That ended up doing far better than I predicted, with an estimated $35 million over the 4-day holiday weekend, about $10 million more than I predicted. It ended up with an estimated $26 million over the 3-day weekend, which was raised to $27.2 million on Monday, with a projected $7.8 million on President's Day. That's actually the best opening for an original animated movie in 3 years, but only because The Wild Robot was based on a book. That's also quite good for Sony Pictures, who haven't had a hit in a long time. Probably last year's 28 years later. The lack of animated family films in theaters should help keep going for a few weeks until the new Pixar animation release Hoppers on March 6th. I think you can get to 80 million or more, maybe even 100 million. That'll be considered a win for Sony, who haven't had a big hit in a while. They haven't released an animated movie in a while because they've been dumping a lot of them to Netflix. Another movie that did far better than I predicted was Bart Layton's crime thriller Crime 101, which combined a great story written by Don Winslow with such a strong cast that it far exceeded most expectations, with a $14.3 million 3-day weekend and a projected $16.4 million, including Monday. Although the movie cost a lot of money, reportedly $90 million, it's not bad for a North American debut, since there's still a lot of money to be made overseas, and word of mouth was generally good, so it could keep going strong in theaters domestically as well. Gore Verbinski's Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die, starring Sam Rockwell and Haley Lu Richardson, opened in 1,610 theaters, about half what those other 3 movies opened in. The Briarcliff sci-fi comedy took in $3.6 million over the 3-day weekend and probably can end up around $4 million, including President's Day Monday. That's maybe a little lower than I predicted, but it's actually okay for Briarcliff, who hasn't had many hits recently. As it would happen, GOAT was the only movie to get an A cinema score this weekend, while all 3 other movies got a B. We'll only really be able to tell what that means for word of mouth and the legs for these 4 movies when we see next week's drops. I have to say that it's been a long time since we've seen a week with so many fresh reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. And that's not even including Cold Storage and Nirvana the band, the show, the movie, neither which I liked. Still, both those opened outside the top 10, but Nirvana was only playing in 361 theaters compared to Cold Storage being in over 1,000 theaters. Still, Nirvana had really strong word of mouth going into it due to being the Monday Mystery Movie last week and playing a bunch of festivals. That helped to bring in $1.2 million, which is about $4,000 per theater, compared to Cold Storage, which just made $1.1 million, again in over 700 more theaters. I have to think Neon will expand Nirvana wider, but they also have a new Baz Luhrmann movie opening this week, so we'll have to see how that goes. Meanwhile, Charlie XCX's mockumentary, The Moment, also added more theaters this past weekend, but even being in over 1,000 theaters, it made just $450,000 or 536 per theater. I guess the competition from Charlie XCX's soundtrack for Sub Wuthering Heights ended up being her own undoing. Let's get to this week's movies, which probably won't be nearly as exciting as this past weekend, although at the time I'm recording this, I've only seen one of the new wide releases, and that is Lionsgate's I Can Only Imagine 2, their latest movie with faith-based producers, the Kingdom Story Company. So let's look at that trailer.
This is where I'm living right now. About 150 years ago, this man, Horatio Spafford, puts his wife and their 4 sweet daughters on a boat to Europe. On that fateful voyage, a freighter hits them, and only his wife survives. I want you to think how you'd respond to having everything in your life taken from you. Did he wave his fist at God? Would have been understandable, right? No. What do you think he did? He takes out a pen, proceeds to write one of the most beautiful songs in history. It is well with my soul.
This sequel continues the story of Bart Millard and Christian rock band Mercy Me, who had a huge hit with the song I Can Only Imagine. Obviously, the popularity of the song made it seem like something that Kingdom Story could turn into a movie of the same name. It actually opened with $17.1 million in March 2018, ended up making $83.5 million domestic, which is a pretty good bellwether for how much these movies can actually make. Although the Erwin Brothers follow-up movie, I Still Believe, also based on a song, only made $10.4 million a few years later. It didn't help that opened on the weekend that movie theaters shut down due to COVID. God was no help for them there. Anyway, this sequel is directed by Andrew Irwin and Brent McCorkle. Irwin, one of the Irwin brothers who directed a lot of the faith-based movies, including the original I Can Only Imagine, its follow-up I Still Believe, and more recently, The American Underdog and the Jesus Music. Meanwhile, McCorkle directed Jesus Revolution Unconditional, so he's also a heavyweight in the faith-based drama world. John Michael Finley returns as Bart Millard, and Trace Adkins also returns, with Dennis Quaid having a small role in flashbacks. The big addition to the cast is Malo Ventimiglia from This Is Us and Heroes as Tim Timmons, an artist who goes on tour with Mercy Me, as well as Sammy Dell as Bart's son Sam, who also goes on tour with them. And he's now an artist in his own right. Considering how much money the original movie made in theaters, there has to be some excitement for the sequel among the Christian rock fans. Supposedly, Mercy Me has gotten even more popular after that first movie, although that first movie is never mentioned in the sequel. That can help I Can Only Imagine 2 open even bigger with closer to the 20 million mark. It'll definitely be the #1 movie this weekend, with Wuthering Heights probably getting hit by the mixed reactions to it from audiences. Now we'll get into some of the movies I haven't seen at the time of this recording, including A24's How to Make a Killing. Cue the trailer.
Okay. Gun to your head. What would you even do with $1 billion?
Why do you have a gun to my head? Since the day I was born, my mother told me we were different. Yes, she had been disowned by her family, but someday I would become the sole heir. The real estate, planes, an island or two.
Beckett, no way. So are you living in the city now?
Yeah, I do. A little outside of it.
Whatever happened to the Redfellow family fortune?
I'll inherit it. Someday.
Well, call me when you've killed them all.
There's also a new Glenn Powell movie this weekend from A24, which I haven't seen yet, called How to Make a Killing. It's written and directed by John Patton Ford, who made the amazing Emily the Criminal, starring Aubrey Plaza a few years back. In this comedy, Powell plays Beckett Redfellow, who's disowned at birth by a wealthy family, and he returns decades later, ready to do anything he can to get his inheritance. Besides Powell, the movie also stars Margaret Qualley, Ed Harris, Topher Grace, Jessica Henwick, and Bill Camp. In many ways, this seems like another etheric comedy thriller, of which we're getting a lot of those next month, with the Ready or Not sequel and They Will Kill You, both in late March. Of course, having Powell star in this movie is going to help get people into theaters. After all, he co-starred in the massive blockbuster Top Gun Maverick with Tom Cruise, followed by the hit rom-com Anyone But You with Sydney Sweeney. That last one grossed $219 million worldwide in 2023, which is pretty good for a rom-com. Powell followed that by headlining Richard Linklater's Hitman on Netflix, no box office, and then the 2025 blockbuster sequel Twisters, which grossed $268 million domestic and another $100 million overseas. That movie was supposed to clinch Powell's B-plus star status, but then a few months back, Edgar Wright's The Running Man, starring Powell, bombed, with just $37.8 million domestic and $68.5 million worldwide. Having not seen the movie at the time of this recording and having no theater counts, there isn't much to say about it right now, but it is the Monday Mystery Movie, So if it's any good, then word of mouth could help it this weekend. I can see it making in the 6 to 8 million range, mainly helped by Powell's presence, though I haven't gotten the impression that many people realize this movie even exists. That may or may not be the case with this next thriller that we're going to show a trailer for right now.
It hasn't even been 48 hours since you buried your husband. What I hope to help you come to grips with, no matter how many times you replay what happened, the outcome is inescapable.
I also haven't seen the satanic serial killer horror film Psycho Killer from 20th Century, but that's because it's only screening for a few critics. It's directed by Gavin Polone, who produced the Zombieland movies as well as The Dog Journey and other dog movies. More recently, Polone was a producer on last week's Cold Storage, which I thought was absolutely terrible. For this one, he's working from a script by Andrew Kevin Walker, who famously wrote Fincher's serial killer thriller, Seven. That may be one of the movie's biggest draws, although this feels like a fairly typical serial killer thriller with satanic undertones. The movie actually stars Georgina Campbell, who also starred in last week's Cold Storage. The cast also includes the legendary Malcolm McDowell from Clockwork Orange, Logan Miller, and former WWE wrestler James Preston Rogers as the titular Psycho Killer. Oddly, 20th Century only opened this movie in 1,000 theaters nationwide, which is very much against their normal MO of getting their films to 3,000 or more theaters. They just might not have as much confidence about the movie's quality or whether the audience will enjoy it, having not been screening in advance for many critics. Although I think there's interest in the movie due to the subject matter, that theater count will definitely hurt, and it's likely to end up more in the 3 million range because of that. Once we see some reviews and reactions to the movie, probably not until Thursday, we can determine whether the movie is really worth expanding or not. But it also has Scream 7 opening next week, so it's not going to last very long in theaters. I hate to sound like a broken record, but I also haven't seen Midwinter Break, a neo-romantic drama from Focus Features that looks to be targeting an older audience with this love story between Kieran Hines and Leslie Manville as a couple who travel to Amsterdam. It's described as, I put in quotes, a stirring meditation on faith, commitment, and the enduring power of love, end quote. So I guess it's a fault in the stars for the over 50 crowd. It's directed by Polly Finley, who directed a 2015 movie called Treasure Island, and she's directed some theaters, but I honestly have no idea how many people even know this movie exists or have any interest in seeing it. It is based in a book, but it maybe should have been released last week, because now it's being released after Valentine's Day, so any chance of getting people in for Valentine's Day is gone. Anyway, again, no theater count for this one, but I expect it to be only moderately wide, maybe 1,000 theaters or less, and it will probably end up outside the top 10 with less than 1.5 million. Last but not least, opening IMAX theaters this weekend. I don't have a theater count. What else is new? But it's Baz Luhrmann's epic, Elvis Presley in Concert, which I have seen and loved. It's absolutely fantastic. Without knowing how many IMAX theaters are going to be in, it's tough to gauge how well it might do. I honestly think that Elvis Presley fans are out there, and they can help get it into the low end of the top 10, maybe around 2 million or so, based on the dedication to the king. I also expect Pillion and Nirvana the band to show the movie to expand to more theaters this weekend. They only need to make around 2 million to get into the top 10, and both of these movies have done really well in limited release. That's it for this week's Weekend Warrior show. I show a few more reviews to share in the print edition, although I haven't had much time to watch screeners this week. And then next week, it's all about Scream 7. Anyway, enjoy some movies this weekend. Become a paid subscriber if you can. And take it away, Dirt Bombs.